Okay, so yeah. Today I thought I would go over Guinaifen in like a little bit of a guide here. I usually script these guides, however, yeah, because Guinaifen's a little bit easier to understand than most other characters, and her playstyle is a little bit straightforward. I think I should be fine to not script this, but yeah, if I get a few numbers and stuff wrong, uh, that is why. As yeah, I'll try to show like my testing and everything that I did yesterday on stream. I did a few damage tests, and I'll try to put all the numbers up on screen that I'm going to be using for like her stats and everything, if I can even access them. Uh, but yeah, we're going to be going over Guinaifen. I just tried to record this video, but I messed up the recording and it was frozen as I wasn't really paying attention and making sure that it was recording properly. Uh, but yeah, it's good now. So yeah, Guinaifen is a fire nihility character. She applies debuffs in a more traditional sense, in my opinion, as most time when I think of a debuffing character, I think of one that reduces enemies' stats, like reducing their defense or reducing their attack and everything. However, in this game, it also considers dot damage to be a debuff, so she also does those. Um, and she deals quite a lot of dot damage. I do think that Guinaifen is probably going to be one of the strongest four-star characters in the game right now. Uh, Definitely for the support role. Um, to give like a Genshin equivalent, I think that Guinaifen's currently like this game's official, where she's not really going to be a character that you could just insert into any particular team, like you can with something like Bennett or Xiangling for some extra damage. But yeah, she's still going to be really good in a lot of teams and be like best in slot in her role of applying really strong debuffs and also still doing quite a lot of dot damage. Like, I do think she's a little bit stronger than Sampo in terms of just dots, not even the extra debuffs and everything. And she's definitely a lot stronger than Lucas dots, as he's only single target right now and everything. So yeah, it's a little bit hard to consistently apply dots across multiple enemies with just him. Sampo's multi-target, so he's a little bit stronger already in terms of applying dots for a character like Kafka, who's going to be able to trigger a ton of dots. But Guinaifen, well, she does only apply dots to up to three enemies at a time with her skill, whereas Sampo can do a little bit more with Eidolons and everything. She's still going to be pretty consistent at applying dots, and she can also self-trigger her own dots, kind of like how Kafka can trigger all dots at an enemy. Uh, Guinaifen can trigger any pyro dot on an enemy. So yeah, it can be dots caused by her, or it can be dots caused by Asta's basic attack. It can be dots caused by Himiko, caused by Hook, caused by the Fire Trailblazer breaking an enemy's weakness, or Topaz breaking an enemy's weakness. As I don't know if Topaz has any way of applying dots outside of that, but yeah, pretty much any instance of fire dot damage will be triggered whenever Guinaifen uses her ultimate. Um, and not only that, a bit of a tip for Guinaifen is whenever Guinaifen uses her skill to or to apply a fire dot on an enemy, whenever that fire dot is triggered, they will be inflicted with the Fire Kiss debuff. But it doesn't necessarily have to be Guinaifen's Fire Dot that applies the Fire Kiss debuff. It can be Asta's uh, dot that is caused by her basic attack. I believe it is, yeah, this bonus Ascension passive here is what gives you the dot for using your basic attack with Asta, or if Asta breaks an enemy's weakness, then that dot will also apply Fire Kiss whenever it is triggered. And you will also apply Fire Kiss if you're not at max stacks whenever you use your ultimate, as you'll be triggering the dots. So yeah, the best way to get more fire dots for Guinaifen outside of a simulated universe and stuff is to run her in like a mono pyro team, as you can use Guinaifen to apply a fire dot with her skill or her basic attack. Then you can use Asta to apply another fire dot with her basic attack, and then you can have the third pyro character break an enemy's weakness, and you can have up to 3 fire dots on one enemy. And then whenever you use Guinaifen's ultimate, that will give them the max stacks of Fire Kiss at Eidolon 0. Because at Eidolon 6, she is able to apply a 4th stack of Fire Kiss. But yeah, the way that Fire Kiss is worded and how it works and everything means that you'll be dealing quite a bit more damage whenever you're at max stacks to enemies. So how damage is calculated is that whenever you do an attack on an enemy, you have the attack value. Like the ultimate here deals 102% of Guinaifen's attack to all enemies. Um, yeah, I just got Elden Ring today, so I'm installing that in the background. Um, but yeah, the attack will deal 102% of Guinaifen's attack to an enemy. So you have that base attack. Then that attack is checked to see if it's a crit, which then adds your crit damage to it. So, like with Guinaifen, that would be 85% crit damage on top of that. And then it adds another multiplier in your fire damage bonus, which mine is at 61.2% at the moment. And then it will also add another multiplier from Fire Kiss now. So as you can see, it makes her damage go up exponentially. And not only for Guinaifen, but that applies for any character uh, that is dealing damage. So if you're doing it with Kafka, you deal Kafka's base attack damage. Then that is multiplied by if it's a crit or not, and then that is multiplied based on her lightning damage bonus, and then that is multiplied with the Fire Kiss bonus damage. So yeah, that is why Guinaifen is a really strong character. She just increases her damage output exponentially for pretty much any character. She's kind of like a Harmony character in a way, but instead of buffing a character directly, she debuffs the enemies. Um, yeah, to go over her Eidolons real quickly, Eidolon 6 is what's going to increase the Fire Kiss by 1, so you're able to get a 4th Fire Kiss stack for even higher exponential damage. Eidolon 5 is going to increase your talent level by another 2, as well as your ultimate, so you're able to get um, even more increased damage on enemies with Fire Kiss, and even more damage on retriggering dots with her ultimate. Um, Eidolon 4 is really strong, in my opinion. However, it's overshadowed by the fact that Eidolon 2 and Eidolon 6 are incredibly strong as well. But this will allow you to get a lot more energy. Um, Anytime that the burn status inflicted by Guinaifen causes damage, Guinaifen regenerates 2 energy. So whenever you're using her ultimate, it's going to give you a little bit of energy back if the enemy has a burn. Um, and it says a burn status inflicted by Guinaifen. So you want to break enemies' weaknesses with Guinaifen if you're just running her for maximum Eidolon 4 value, as you're able to apply 2 fire dots in them at that point. So you're able to regenerate 4 energy every time that they take uh, fire damage. Um, and not only that, but whenever you're running her with Kafka, anytime that Kafka uses her skill or ultimate, Guinaifen's also going to be getting some extra energy back. So if you're breaking an enemy's weakness and uh, applying the fire debuff on them already, they'll have 2 instances of a fire debuff. Then whenever Kafka uses her skill, those will both be triggered, giving you another 4 energy. Whenever Kafka uses her ultimate, they'll be triggered, giving you 4 energy. Whenever Guinaifen uses her ultimate, it's going to be triggered, giving her 4 energy. So you're already at 12 energy there. And then whenever it's the enemy's turn, they'll take the fire damage if they're still alive at that point. And that will be another 4 energy for a total of 16 energy for free, pretty much. So yeah, it will be really strong. However, it's only the burns caused by Guinaifen. So if you're running her in Mono Pyro, for example, and you use Asta to apply a burn, Guinaifen to apply a burn, and the enemy's weakness is broken by another pyro or fire character, and that applies a burn, you'll only regenerate the 2 energy whenever the burns are triggered, as it's only for Guinaifen's burns. And then Eidolon 3 is going to be more skill and base attack damage. Um, Eidolon 2, so that's going to be more fire dot multiplying damage. And then Eidolon 2 is really strong as this just increases the damage multiplier of the burn status applied by Guinaifen's base attack or skill by 40%. So I believe that will make her deal more dot damage than Sampo at Eidolon 0 by quite a bit. If they both had the same level of their skill and talent and everything that apply burn. I believe they would, this would set Guinaifen well over Sambo's damage output. So, yeah, I do believe it's between this one and Eidolon 6 that are going to be your strongest. If you're just running her in dot teams, probably going to be Eidolon 2 as your strongest. But if you're running her in non-dot teams, then Eidolon 6 is going to be her strongest Eidolon. Uh, yeah, this is just really strong. And then Eidolon 1 is still pretty good. It lowers the amount of effect hit rate that you need on Guinaifen, as whenever you use your skill, you'll apply effect resistance debuffs. It'll make it where the enemies uh, have a lowered effect resistance and everything. So you'll technically need less effect hit rate. However, it applies after you've used your skill. So because you already have to use your skill to apply the debuff, you might as well just go ahead and get up to the like 70 to 80% effect hit rate that you need on Guinaifen. Mine's a little bit lower than that at 58%, even with Sampo's Light Cone. However, I don't really have the greatest of relics for her at the moment, as that's something I'm putting off until 1.5 to start farming, as um, whenever 1.3 released, they added some new relic sets, so I think that they could add some in 1.5. And if any of those are better than what are currently released, then I want to kind of wait on that, as 1.4 is pretty close to being completed, as 1.4 was initially stated to be a shorter patch and everything. And yeah, whenever Topaz's banner is gone in like less than 2 weeks from now, then 1.5 will be released, and if there's a new relic set, I will be farming for that and everything, if it's better for Guinaifen. But at the moment, if you're just wanting to run her on something that's usable, you can use like 2-piece of the Lava Forging set if you happen to have any of that around, plus 2-piece Musketeer, going to be probably your best option. However, you could do 2-piece Lava Forging and 2-piece Speed if you want more speed, as speed is still going to be really strong. um, 2-piece fire, 2-piece deep shooting meteor for more break effect damage if we wanted a more break effect focus build. Or you could do like 2-piece musketeer, 2-piece break effect if you just want damage and break effect. It is better to go for a 2-piece fire set than 2-piece wind or wild wheat sets for your damage, as the damage bonus, like the fire damage bonus, is better than just increasing attack. Even though the attack percent is by 12%, so it looks bigger, it is not as strong as the 10% damage that is exponential damage. This is like kind of exponential damage, but it's not nearly as much as the exponential damage added by the fire damage bonus. So that is why, in general, it's better to go for that. And then for substats, you're going to be wanting pretty much as much effect hit rate as possible, speed and attack percent. So any of those stats will do. You can also get things like effect resist or crit rate and crit damage if you want those. But the main ones to look out for are effect hit rate up to like 70 to 80%, and then speed, so that way you're faster than your Kafka, or if you're running her in dot teams. She doesn't really need that much speed outside of dot teams. However, it's still good to have more speed than to not have speed for any dot character. Um, and then you can also use attack percent for more damage and everything. So that's also going to be really good. Um, and then another thing to note with Guinaifen is that you can technically run her as a full-on support where you just give her a bunch of health. So like you can run I don't have any here, but you can run like the 2-piece Guard of Weathering Snow, which gives you some damage reduction, and like the 2-piece speed set alongside that. So she's just kind of more tanky and is able to survive, and you just give her like 80% effect hit rate. If you're running her in non-dot focus teams and you don't really care about how much damage she deals herself and are just wanting to have another character be your damage dealer, then yeah, you can make her more survivable in that way. Um, As far as Planter Sphere stuff go, I'm running her on Rudolent Arena. This is not very optimal, but this Planter Sphere I have on her is really strong, so that is why I am using it, as I don't have Topaz at the moment or anything. I don't even have this one leveled up, as it's not that good and everything. I just have a few levels in it and stuff, but yeah. Ideally, you have something like the um, Pan-Cosmic or Pan-Cosmic Commercial Enterprise. I'm used to saying Galactic Enterprise, but they changed the name. But yeah, Pan-Cosmic Commercial Enterprise, or Pan-Galactic Commercial Enterprise, I think is what it was called. But either way, this is going to be a really strong one. I don't think it's necessarily her best in slot. It does lower your effect hit rate requirements, um, as it gives you a ton of effect hit rate, so you don't have to worry about them in subsets as much. But the main issue is that that's pretty much all that it does. It doesn't really like it boosts your attack by a little bit, but it's not as good as something like Space Sealing Station, which is going to be significantly stronger. Unless you have like 100% effect hit rate and everything, in which case you're already losing out on attack and stuff. So, in my opinion, it's probably going to be better to go for Space Sealing Station as long as you're at the effect hit rate requirements for whatever you need. Um, However, another one that will be useful is the Broken Keel slash Fleet of Ageless ones. As yeah, if you're just running her once again for non-damage dealing purposes, and you're wanting another character to be your damage dealer, these will make her a little bit more survivable while buffing your damage dealer. Um, as Broken Kill makes it where you're stunned less often, and it also increases your crit damage, whereas Fleet of Ageless increases your HP and also increases all allies' attacks, which it is still good on Guinaifen, as it will increase her attack by a little bit as well. And then another one is the Energy Regeneration set. I don't have any here at the moment. Do I even have any on my account at this point? Don't think so. But yeah, it's called like the I can't say the name because it's weird spelling and everything, but let's see. Oh, you can't even show it here. It's probably in databank then. Yeah, if you go to relics, it is this one here. Uh, this one's going to give you some more energy regeneration, so going to be pretty good. And it will also advance your action forward by 40%, which stacks alongside your action advancement from your passive. And then you also have Talia Kingdom of Banditry for break effect. This one's also not that bad if you're running a break effect build for Guinaifen. However, I don't think it's that strong. And yeah, I think Celestial Differentiator and Insert Salsato are probably going to be your least valuable planar spheres and everything. But yeah, to go kind of like over her moves, as I don't think I've done that yet. So I'll just do it briefly. As yeah, I did record one of these a second ago, so I don't remember if I've done this or not. But for your Ascension passive, you have your basic attack. Ascension passive one. It's going to make it where your basic attack has an 80% chance of inflicting burn, making you a little bit more skill point friendly. Since your skill is no longer the only thing applying burns, your basic attack can do it now. Um, and because you can only put one burn on an enemy, whenever you use your basic attack, it will just refresh the burn. So, yeah, since a burn only lasts for 2 turns, you need to make sure that you're refreshing them with your basic attack if combat's lasting a lot longer than 2 turns. With the bladed hoop, you will have your action advance forward by 25%. This means that generally Guinaifen's always going to be the first um, in almost any combat scenario. She's going to be the first thing moving, especially if you have a ton of speed on her already. Um, which is really good for dot characters, really good for Kafka teams, really good for pretty much any team, as you're going to be going ahead and hitting enemies with the burn status, which will apply fire kiss on them uh, whenever their turn begins. So, like, let's say that your Guinaifen's at like 150 speed, um, the enemies are at 130 speed and the rest of your characters are at 120 speed. What will happen is Guinaifen will apply the burn on them. Then the enemy's turn will begin and they will all take a burn, giving them 1 stack of fire kits. And then your characters can attack and deal that increased damage from the fire kits. And then your technique also applies fire kits to enemies. It's a bounce hit, kind of like a Sampo's skill or um, Welt's skill, where it's going to be hitting random enemies. So it could all four hits could hit one enemy, or all four hits could hit all different enemies. So it's very random and not that consistent, but it's still going to be probably your best opener on any team that you're running her in, unless you're running her with Asta. I do think Asta is a little bit better because with Asta, you can use her technique and then use Asta's basic attack at the beginning of combat and apply a burn with her. So that way you have two burns on an enemy alongside Guinaifen's burn, as your Guinaifen's probably going to be moving before your Asta anyway. So she'll apply a burn, and then Asta can apply a burn, and that will also increase Guinaifen's attack by a little bit due to Asta's passive being triggered, or Asta's talent being triggered by her initiating combat with her technique. But yeah, the bad thing about Guinaifen's technique is that it will initiate combat, so you can't just switch to Guinaifen, use her technique, and then switch to another character like with Chapard or Bronya or Tingyun. You do have to stay in. It's kind of like Yukong or Kafka's. Although Yukong's doesn't initiate combat, you have to initiate combat with the buff um, for the buff to still be active. But I mean that you can't switch off of Yukong and still have the buff, as you must still remain on Yukong to get the buff after you've used their technique. But yeah, and then your ultimate is going to be dealing fire damage to all enemies and triggering their burns uh, that are on them. So if you're running her in Mono Pyro, then you'll probably have a few more burns than if you're running her in just a random dot team, like with Kafka. But yeah, she's kind of like a mini Kafka, but only for burns, and she does less damage, but still really strong. And then if the enemies are not at 3 or 4 stacks of fire kits, depending on your Eidolon level, then the ultimate will add some more fire kits to them. And then your skill is a blast skill, meaning that it will hit up to 3 targets if you're aiming at um, 1 target that's in the middle and 2 on the sides. It will hit 3. If you're aiming at the one on the left in that situation, it will only hit 2. And if the other 2 enemies are dead and there's only one enemy, then it will only hit one enemy, of course. But yeah, it will apply burn. It has a little bit of a higher chance to apply burn, as it's 100% instead of the 80% from the basic attack. It will deal damage to a single target and then a smaller percentage of that damage to the 2 adjacent targets, or 1 adjacent target if you're aiming at one on the side. And then the burn is all burns caused by Guinaifen are based off of this number. So the one caused by your basic attack is based on the one from your skill. So we'll deal at level 8, 167% of Guinaifen's attack. And then Guinaifen also deals more damage to burned enemies. So yeah. I believe it only works if there is one burn on the enemy. So if you have 3 burns on an enemy, it's not going to be dealing or she won't be dealing 60% more damage. It will only cap out at 20. But yeah, um, overall, she also has some effect hit rate boost, which are really nice, and also some break effect boost and fire damage boost. So all of her um, bonus stats that you get from her skill tree are going to be really invaluable and are definitely worth picking up. As it will lower her effect hit rate requirements for the effect hit rate boost. It will increase her damage with the damage boost from the fire. And then if you're getting more breaks with your Guinaifen, then the break enhance stat boosts are going to be really nice. And I believe she's the only character at the moment that has any break enhance boost offered on her skill tree. But yeah, because the skill is a blast, she's going to synergize really well with characters like Kafka, who also deal blast damage with their skill. So Kafka or the physical Trailblazer deals blast damage. Like pretty much any destruction character deals blast damage. Even Jingliu, her skill, whenever it's enhanced, is a blast skill, and her ultimate is also a blast hit. So yeah, overall, you're going to be wanting to or she's going to have a little bit more value with characters that deal blast damage or deal AoE damage in general. So, yeah. As far as light cones for her go, to quickly go over those, any Nihility light cone is kind of okay, but there are definitely some that are significantly better than others. So all of the 5-star light cones both have like their pluses and minuses. They're mostly just stat 6 on her, as none really like synergize too well with her. Incessant Rain gives you a lot of effect hit rate, which is really nice, and some additional like crit rate depending on if enemies have 3 or more debuffs. But with Guinaifen, it's really easy to have multiple debuffs as the Fire Kiss and Burn count as 2 separate debuffs. So, um, yeah, for something like Good Night Sleep Well, that will deal increased damage for every debuff that the enemy has, you're going to be getting more value with Guinaifen than you would with some other characters, as yeah, she inherently applies 2 debuffs just by herself. Eyes of Prey is probably going to be her best in slot 4-star though, as it significantly reduces the amount of effect hit rate you have to get on your characters, as well as increasing her dots. However, Good Night Sleep Well does have a higher damage ceiling. I believe that has the highest damage ceiling out of any Nihility Light Cone, as yeah, as long as you have 3 debuffs on an enemy and you have good effect hit rate on your Guinaifen, and you don't need the extra effect hit rate from Eyes of Prey, then I believe this will cause you to deal the most damage. Solitary Healing, also a really strong option, as it increases break effect, increases dot damage, and also regenerates some energy, which is really nice for Guinaifen. As yeah, you're going to be wanting to try to use her burst because it's like with Kafka, like you're going to be wanting to try to trigger as many debuffs as possible, um, and everything. Another good option for her is actually this Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat. The main issue with this, just a note out of the gate, it does only have a 60% chance to apply the Ensnare debuff on enemies whenever you're at a lower superimposition level, but it does get higher with more superimposition levels. So if you do have it with some more of those, then it's going to be pretty good on her as yeah, it's just another way of increasing the damage that other characters will deal on these enemies as Guinaifen's ultimate is an AoE, so it will hit all enemies, and Guinaifen's skill is a blast, so it will hit 3 enemies, and they all will have that ensnare debuff on them. For Mada, it's good if you're running her in a dot team. It still has pretty good break effect value, but yeah, she doesn't apply shock or wind shear herself, so you do want a character that can do that for her. We will meet again. Honestly, not that great. It's a battle pass like home, so if you're free to play, you don't even have to worry about it. Um, but yeah, it just increases your damage output if you're running her just solely for the damage instead of the dot effects for some reason. Before the tutorial mission starts, does give you effect hit rate, which is nice. So it's like if you have no other option and you don't have Pela or Silverwolf, and you want to run the Slight Cone on her, then you can. She doesn't get the defense reduced enemies buff. That's not what her Fire Kiss does. It's not counted towards that. It makes them take increased damage, but it does not directly defense reduce them. So yeah, it's not the same thing. If you're running her with Pela or with Silverwolf, then you can actually run this and get the extra energy then. But honestly, it's not really worth it. Void is a pretty good option for 3 stars, as it just reduces the effect hit rate that you need on Guinaifen for the first 3 turns and everything. And these 2 are pretty bad in general, so I wouldn't even recommend leveling this up. But I mean, if you have like no other option than Void, it's fine. Um, However, you should probably get something a little bit better eventually and everything. So, yeah, to go over teams really quickly, I did do some testing of these teams on my own. I don't have all the numbers as I didn't go back and watch the VOD when I streamed this yesterday. Um, like I said, I was going to, but yeah, I haven't done that yet. So, let me go ahead and pull up the little Google sheet that I did for this. So, yeah. Um, Or I was supposed to turn that on, but it's fine. We're like 30 minutes into this, so and we're almost done, so it's fine. I'll just go ahead and close it. But um, yeah, for the testing, I used Memory of Chaos 10 with just the first enemy that you fight, which is a monkey, and 2 of the Sanctus Medicus guys that respawn after you kill them once. Um, so all you had to do to clear the or to reach the cycles used here on this little column, all you had to do that was just defeat the monkey. That was all that I wanted to see. Um, so yeah, for the Clara team, This team didn't deal that much damage. However, my Clara is not built that well. I do think that this team is really interesting, as with Guinaifen, you're going to be applying a lot of the Fire Kiss debuffs to multiple enemies, and then with Clara, she hits multiple enemies. She's one of, if not the strongest multi-target damage dealers in the game at the moment. So, yeah, overall, pretty good team. If you actually build your Clara, I don't have mine built, so it did take the longest in terms of the cycles used, but it could easily go down with more built Clara. And I also don't really have my team unit built up that well either. And honestly, my Guinaifen's not that built well, as she doesn't have the optimal relics at the moment and everything, but still able to clear the monkey pretty easily um, in 6 cycles. So, yeah, that would be enough to probably clear the other side as well, but it would take a bit longer. Overall, I think that this team is going to be like one of Guinaifen's best teams for non-dot scenarios. So, like, if you're just running Guinaifen as a debuffer and not as a dot character, then I think this team is going to be really strong. Um, for the um, next team I did was a Jing Liu team. So the idea behind this team is that Jing Liu is going to be dealing quite a lot of blast damage, and Guinaifen's debuffs and everything are blast debuffs whenever you use her skill, so they just kind of directly synergize together. Um, but yeah, I didn't really get that high of a damage number. It was Jing Liu's ult dealt it did kill the other 2 enemies, which meant that Guinaifen's ult dealt less damage overall, as I used Guinaifen's ult after Jingliu's ult, as Jingliu's ult went first, because Jingliu regenerates so much energy so quickly that her ult ended up going first, and I did also use Jingliu's technique instead of using Guinaifen's technique to initiate combat, as Jingliu's is a little bit higher priority, as you want her to enter the enhanced state as fast as possible. So, yeah, unfortunately, Guinaifen's ult dealt less damage overall than in any other team, just because the other 2 enemies died was the main issue there. But yeah, still did pretty good damage. They only had like 1 stack of fire kits for this as well, and I hadn't used Bronya's ult. But if you actually use Bronya's ult and everything, they're going to get a lot more crit damage. And you can even use the Broken Kill Planter Sphere set to on Guinaifen, so that way your Jingliu has more crit damage. Is kind of what I was talking about earlier. I didn't even do that, and Jingliu still did pretty good damage. But on that team, I would actually recommend it, as you don't really care about Guinaifen's individual damage, as long as you get your effect hit rate high enough on Guinaifen, that is. Um, then for the next team comp I did was Guinaifen Hyper Carry. They used 3 cycles. The Jingliu team used 1 cycle. I didn't 0 cycle it with anyone, but I wasn't really expecting to, as I definitely need to build Guinaifen up a little bit more for something like that. Um, but yeah, for this team, it was just trying to see how much damage I could get Guinaifen to do by herself. So I ran her with 3 Harmony characters. I think they were her 3 best in slot Harmony characters. As you don't really care about crit damage too much, so Yukong doesn't have that much value. But Bronya and Asta provide a lot of attack buffs, and so does Tingyun as well. Tingyun providing energy recharge and a damage boost. Um, Bronya providing additional turns and everything, and then Asta gives extra attack and extra speed, which any dot character is going to like, as well as having a chance to apply burns herself with her basic attack, meaning that your Guinaifen ult is going to be dealing more damage. So yeah, that was the method I used to get the highest Guinaifen ult damage at 52,042. And then for Mono Pyro team, that was Fire Trailblazer, Guinaifen, Asta, and Silverwolf. The enemy was fire weak, so I noted it here, as it was the gorilla enemy. I did still bring Silverwolf for it, even though it was a Fire Weak enemy. You can run like Hook or Topaz here instead of Silverwolf if they're already Fire Weak, so that way you actually have a Fire DPS. But I wanted to kind of see how Guinaifen as a DPS character would be. Um, and for this, I even used Goodnight Sleepwell Superimposition 2 um, as whenever you're running Guinaifen plus Asta, you're able to quickly get the 3 debuff stacks as Asta's basic attack has a chance of applying burn. The Fire Trailblazer, whenever they break an enemy's weakness, that will apply a burn. Whenever Asta breaks an enemy weakness, that will apply a burn. Or whenever Guinaifen does, that will apply a burn, or Guinaifen skill. So overall, you have a lot of ways of triggering burn. Um, and yeah, that was able to deal pretty good damage overall, alongside Silverwolf's ult. I forgot to note how many Fire Kiss stacks there were on this one, but it was probably 3 stacks, as it's really easy to build Fire Kiss with Mono Pyro teams. Yeah, with Mono Pyro, the interesting thing about it is that um, you're able to trigger burns on enemies without having to hit them with Guinaifen, and whenever those burns uh, deal burn damage to enemies, during their turn, they still get Fire Kiss, even if Guinaifen was not the one to hit them. And at Eidolon 1, a trick with Guinaifen as well, in this team specifically, is that Guinaifen will reduce the effect resist of the enemies whenever she hits them with her skill. That will make it where the Trailblazer's taunt is more effective, as it's based on her effect hit rate and the enemy's effect resistance. And Asta's basic attack, applying burn, will also be more likely to trigger in that team. And then next up, we used a Yanqing team. This was just kind of to test a hunt character. I do think this has a little bit less value than any other characters. It did have the highest damage number of Yanqing's ult plus follow-up attack on an enemy that had 5 sword play stacks plus Bronya ults, and they probably had like 3 stacks of Fire Kiss at that point, or 2 or 3. Um, as I did use Guinaifen's technique to initiate combat with that team. But yeah, overall, dealt the highest damage. So yeah, pretty good. Um, and that was back on Eyes of Prey. For the rest of them, I just use Eyes of Prey. It was only the Mono Pyro team that I use Goodnight Sleepwell on, as I have it at lower super hit position. And yeah, for the Jing Yuan team, this did not clear. However, it still did pretty good damage. It did a little bit more damage than Yanqing did, if you count Lightning Lord as well. However, this was Jing Yuan's ult. I forgot to specify that, but yeah, this was Jing Yuan ult. So yeah, it had Bronya's ult and Ting Yun's ult plus 3 stacks of Fire Kiss for that damage, and then Lightning Lord also dealt pretty good damage, although Ting Yun was dead at the time. So she was not providing any damage buffs whenever that happened. And yeah, they all ended up getting wiped, as I did not have a sustain unit for that one. For this one, this was a just pure dot damage. If you wanted to try to get as much dot damage as possible, this is probably going to be the best team for it. It's Aztec, Guinaifen, Kafka, and Sampo. You're not running any sustain, you're only focusing on damage. They cleared it in 2 cycles. The highest damaging number was the Kafka ult with 2 wind shears. What I meant by 2 wind shear here was that Sampo broke the monkey's weakness and also applied his own wind shear. I do think that it's probably better to break the enemy's weakness with Asta on this team, most likely, if you're running Asta with higher break effect, like how I have her built. However, I was actually running her on Planetary Rendezvous, so she would have dealt less damage. And I think Guinaifen getting the break would have been a little bit better. Um, so yeah, pretty good Guinaifen damage. It was only 1 burn with 3 stacks of Fire Kiss on the ult, but yeah, overall, not that bad of damage. This next team was, if you're running a dot team without Kafka, they cleared it in 4 cycles, which means that Kafka saved about half the time, and they also had Japard for more sustain and everything, so they were technically dealing less damage. And the highest damaging number was Guinaifen's ult, which had 3 burns, as Asta broke an enemy's weakness, um, and had applied a burn herself from her basic attack, and then Guinaifen had played her burn with her skill. So you had 3 burns there, and 3 sacks of fire kits as well. And then this was a realistic team. This is how I would run the team in Memory of Chaos. They cleared it in 2 cycles. The highest damaging move was my Asta with 140. Or how much break effect does she have? I can pull it up here. She has 148.5% break effect. So yeah, that dealt the most damage out of any move somehow at 39,050. They did have 3 stacks of Fire Kiss on them at the time. Um, And then I noted that Kafka's skill, because Kafka's ult happened at a really weird turn where they didn't have that much stacks on them and everything, but Kafka's skill did 25,000-ish damage with 2 burn, 1 shock, 3 fire kiss. And then Guinaifen's ult dealt about 32,000 damage with 2 burn, 3 fire kiss. The second burn was Asta's break burn, which dealt a pretty good amount of damage because the amount of damage that a break effect dot deals is based on mostly your break effect. Although it does have a little bit of scaling off of your attack, it's still mostly with your break effect. So with higher break effects, it's a little bit better. However, the fire dot in general is really weak. So it's not something that you should really be aiming to maximize the damage out of, except for Hook, Guinaifen, and I believe Himiko also have or also has a scaling burn that is based more off of their attack than anything else. So with them, they will actually deal pretty good dot damage as yeah, their dot damage is based on their attack rather than just the dot damage or just like the fire dot itself. Like the individual dots, whenever you break an enemy's weakness, have their own like innate multipliers that are just based on whatever type was used to break the enemy's weakness and stuff. It's kind of like a hidden stat that you can really see in game and everything. It's just like through testing. It's how you'd be able to find it out and stuff. But yeah, overall, those were the teams that I used. And if you want like more of a visualization, I'll leave a link to the stream where I tested all of these things in the description of this. But let me change this back to Star Rail here. If you want like a better um, visualization of what some of these teams look like. So this was the Clara team. This was the Kafka team here that I used. Um, this was Yanqing's team. I do sometimes run Yanqing with March 7th instead of with Japard, as Japard's really slow, even with speed boots and everything. So he doesn't really get his ultimate up in time to shield Yanqing all the time, as Yanqing's really fast and it's going to be taking multiple turns with Bronya and everything. So running a character like March who can apply her shield more consistently on Yanqing, because it's based off of her skill, is a little bit more effective sometimes. But yeah, I did run him with Japard in this case, as Japard's a little bit more consistent, as he's able to shield everyone and it doesn't use any skill points either, so that's really nice as well. This was the Jingliu team that I ran. I do think this is one of Guinaifen's best teams as well, just because Jingliu is really strong, deals blast damage, and Guinaifen's debuffs are all blast based, outside of the basic attack one, of course. But yeah, like basically you're going to be dealing blast damage most of the time anyway with Guinaifen if you're skilling with her. So yeah, overall, going to be really strong still. This was a mono pyro team. If you're running a or against an enemy that is already fire weak, you can swap out Silver Wolf for someone like Hook or Topaz for an actual DPS. However, I did treat this as if Guinaifen herself was the DPS, um, and tried to like maximize her damage output with this team. But yeah, if they're already fire weak, then yeah, no reason to do that. You can just run an actual DPS character if you have them built. My hook's not really that built at the moment, so um, yeah, that wasn't that much of an option. And this was the hyper carry team that I ran. And yeah, I was actually able to clear. You could swap out one of the characters for Yukong if you have your Yukong built and everything. My Yukong's like not even in that great of a position, even if he was built, due to like all of the speed balancing and stuff you'd have to do. Another issue with running Yukong is that if you are running Guinaifen, she's pretty much always going to be going first unless you have like an incredibly slow Guinaifen and a incredibly fast Yukong. That would be the only way to get around Guinaifen's Ascension passive getting in the way of everything. But yeah, for speed tuning and stuff, you wouldn't really be able to. I mean, I guess you could zero cycle if you're fast enough to get a second turn with Guinaifen on turn 0. Then you could zero cycle with the Yukong team and everything. It just depends on like how much damage and everything you're doing. But overall, increasing crit rate and crit damage on Guinaifen's not as impactful as I mean her multipliers are okay on her damage and stuff. Like you have 105% damage on the skill to a single target, and then 102% on the ultimate to everyone. Um, However, you're already getting outclassed by characters like Jing Yuan uh, at around the same level with his ultimate. Like if you're running a uh, an actual character that's more designed for a main DPS role, then Guinaifen's going to be outshone by them a little bit. Even like Kafka's going to have a uh, little bit, or she actually has a lower multiplier. However, she does apply shock with that and also triggers all the dots and everything. So it's kind of based on all of that and everything. But yeah, she technically does deal a little bit more damage than Kafka in terms of just the actual like hit without triggering the dots. Um, but if you're running her with Kafka, she's still going to be really strong and everything. But yeah, I actually kind of need to do a little bit more testing because on this particular point, because the thing is with Kafka, a lot of, or not a lot, but like most people run her as a dot character. However, there are some people that run a more crit based Kafka, where you're focusing on crit rate and crit damage because she's able to deal a pretty good amount of damage with her skill and her ultimate and everything to multiple enemies. So they run her as like a more traditional DPS in that way. But I wonder if using Guinaifen in a similar position would be worth trying because she does have a bit of a larger AoE ultimate damage. However, her skill damage is much less. So, and that's probably kind of the main appeal of Kafka is just your AoE damage from your skill rather than your ultimate. But yeah, that's pretty much all that I have to say about Guinaifen at the moment. She's still fairly new, so it remains to be seen if anyone's going to be too much stronger than her, too much weaker. And also, in the future, there could be a better relic set for her and everything that's a bit more focused on something like dot damage or something like, or like a better pyro relic set as well, because the current fire relic set is not that great in general, as even like the 4-piece version doesn't have that much utility on Guinaifen. But yeah, at the moment, I do think Guinaifen's going to be um, a really strong character to run. Like, if you don't have Ting Yun for some reason, and you just want like a character that goes alongside a DPS character, like let's say that you didn't have Bronya and you didn't have like any like let's say you didn't have any Harmony character or whatever, and you're just wanting to run like a Jing Liu team, you could run Guinaifen um, as your support in this case, as she's going to be allowing you to deal significantly more damage to enemies with her talent, as long as it's at like not even necessarily at max stacks, but even at like 2 stacks, it's still like 10% extra damage at lower levels and everything. So yeah, overall, I think this character is going to be really strong in the future. Um, and she's already strong at the moment. Like, don't get me wrong, she's already probably like an A or like I would say low S tier slash high A tier character, probably like the top of A tier in terms of support at the moment. If she's not an S tier, but with a better relic set, um, and maybe some more characters in the future, she could even uh, go higher in terms of utility and stuff. But right now, she's already quite strong. I think that she's already a stronger alternative to Sampo or Luca in a Kafka dot team at the moment, which is really nice, as that retroactively makes Kafka a stronger character. That's something that a lot of people have said for a long time about Kafka whenever she released and everything, is that the main thing holding Kafka back as a character in terms of dot damage is that all of the support characters that deal dot damage are really weak. Like Sampo was like a C tier character before Kafka released. Um, Luca, after Kafka's released, sees really little use outside of dot teams and everything. He does have his own place in the meta, I will say, in terms of break effect and stuff, but um, yeah, overall, just the fact that he's single target makes him a little bit weaker. However, I feel like Guinaifen is a character that can transcend the dot archetype and just be like more of a general nihility character, kind of like Silverwolf or even Welt to an extent, because Welt's kind of his own thing as well. And even Kafka to an extent in builds that don't utilize dot damage dealers with Kafka and focus more on like a hyper carry build for. But yeah, overall, that's my thoughts on Guinaifen. I'll leave a link to the um, stream where I tested out all of the teams that I showed here. Well, I think I didn't test all of these teams, but um, or no, I did test all of these teams and I tested a few more um, in that stream. So yeah, I'll leave a link to that. It has timestamps for all of the teams that I tested in the description and the comment of that video because I'm not really sure if the description one works all the time. So I just go ahead and leave a comment that's a direct copy and paste of what I put in the description for the timestamps. So that way people can access them if you want to see like the individual runs and everything. Because I missed out on getting like Clara's damage bonuses and I didn't take note of like all the times that I had fire kiss and all that kind of stuff. Um, you can get a more accurate scope of her damage and stuff in that video if you want. But yeah, overall, I think this character is really strong. Even at Eidolon 0, with even or with Eidolon 2 to Eidolon 6, like you're getting so much more value that I think she'll even rise further beyond. Then she's probably going to be like an S tier character for sure at Eidolon 6. But yeah, just like Eidolon 0, I think she's like top of A slash bottom of S at the moment. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Guinaifen. I might do more guides like this in the future rather than scripting them out, as it's a bit easier for me to just sit down and record this rather than spend like a few days writing a script. Because if I'm writing a script, then I can't stream or do anything else on the side, so it's a little bit harder for me to find time for that kind of a thing. Um, but yeah, I'll probably do that for some future character releases and everything. I wanted to do one for Jing Liu, but pretty much everyone knew how Jing Li works, and she's really strong and simple. And Guinaifen's pretty simple as well, but I just kind of wanted to shed light on other teams that weren't just kind of a dot focused team and just talk about the strength of this character as a debuffing character in general, not just a dot damage dealer. So, yeah, that'll be it for now. Guys, I'll see everyone in the next one.